Welcome back, talking about transversals. This is some horrible font here, but it says transversals with parallel lines. Okay? Before we even talk about these first things, let's see what's going on here. Do you notice these arrows that are on the two lines that have been crossed by the transversal, right? So this one is the transversal, and these are our two other lines that have been crossed. Because these are parallel, and only if they are parallel, I'll show you an example. This was from yesterday, right? Alternate interior, nice job. These two lines are not parallel. So this is the best that we can do. You can sharpen if you need. This is the best we can do. We can just say what they're called, okay? The reality is, even if I told you that this one was 100 degrees exactly, we would have no idea what angle 2 is. There's no way for us to figure it out. Because more or less, these are just two random lines. Now, if we know that these are parallel, it's going to make all 8 of these angles able to be exactly identified with just a small amount of information. So, let's check this out. Okay? If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then, so let's look at this, okay? If we have corresponding, yeah. Let's say we have corresponding, that would be like 2 and 6. You guys agree that 2 and 6 are corresponding? So, what do you notice about 2 and 6? How do their angles look? Angle 2 looks obtuse, and how does angle 6 look? Also obtuse. In fact, it looks exactly the same. Angle 2 is looking exactly like angle 6. So, corresponding angles are congruent. Okay? Now, what does congruent mean? It just means they're the same, right? So, if you have corresponding angles and those two lines are parallel, then they're guaranteed to be congruent. Okay? Alternate interior. So alternate interior, this would be like 4 and 6. And when it comes to 4 and 6, guess what? Just like Monte was saying, they are both obtuse, and they actually look exactly the same. Again, alternate interior angles are congruent. I don't know that I like that U. It's kind of ugly, but whatever. Now, so far you're probably thinking, wow, everything's congruent. Obviously, it's not the case that all 8 of these angles are all the exact same thing. Okay? Up next is alternate exterior. Okay? Alternate exterior reminds me of something like 1 and 7. Alternate exterior, what do you notice about 1 and 7? They both look acute, and they both look the exact same. So guess what? Alternate exterior angles are congruent. Again, what we're realizing is that all of these things, all of these angles are the same. That's going to make these questions very easy, because if one of them is 15, all of these are going to be 15, 15, 15. Now, here's where we're going to switch it up a little bit. Consecutive, which means same side, interior. If you look at 3 and 6, these are consecutive because they're on the same side. These are interior. If you look at 3 and 6, do you notice that 3 is acute and 6 is obtuse? There's no way they're congruent. because we know one's bigger than 90, we know one's smaller than 90. So congruent is not the case. But what we got is that these are supplementary. Okay? So let's write this down. Then we'll talk about what it means. We should already know. Supplementary is way back when we first started talking about angles. And if you remember, supplementary starts like this, and we drew this kind of symbol so that it looked like it said 180. And I was telling you guys, I don't think it looks that good, honestly. This is kind of a mess. But you need to know that supplementary means they add up to make 180. Okay? So when you look at consecutive interior angles, they're going to add up to make 180. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you not have one of these? Here you go. Yeah. The good news is you've only missed 4 words. Lastly is consecutive exterior. What do you think about consecutive exterior, like 2 and 7? You think they're congruent, or you think they're supplementary? 2 is looking obtuse. 7 is looking acute. We know these are parallel. That means we're going to be supplementary. I don't know why I'm doing some caps and some lowercase. I don't know. I'm a mess, all right? Leave me alone. We're just mixing it up. Okay. Now, that is all the notes for the day. Corresponding, if you have these parallel, are congruent, alternate, congruent, consecutive, supplementary. It is worth noting that if you recall from Unit 1, vertical angles are congruent. We already know that, so that's something that should be kind of in our brain. And angles that form a linear pair are always supplementary. So remember, linear pair just means adjacent and supplementary, right? So like, for example, 1 and 2. Obviously, those are supplementary. They add up to make 180. So, really easy here. It says identify the angle pair as congruent or supplementary. Okay? So we've got 3 and 5. I see 3 and 5. Do you think these are exactly the same angle, or do you think they're going to add up to make 180? These are looking congruent to me. I agree. Congruent. And why? I would say because these are alternate interior. Awesome. 1 and 8. There's my 1. There's my 8. I see that these are consecutive. I see that 1 is acute and 8 is obtuse. That means they can't be congruent. So we have to have supplementary. And how do these relate to each other? They look like consecutive exteriors. Consecutive exteriors. Okay, 2 and 6. I see 2 and 6. Those are looking corresponding. I see that we have obtuse and obtuse. They look exactly the same, and they're looking like congruent. And those are looking corresponding. I don't know what's going on with my handwriting today, but maybe I had a stroke at lunch. I'm not sure. All right, you guys help me out. 1 and 7. What do you think about 1 and 7? Congruent, supplementary?
Congruent.
I heard 2 different answers. I see that 1's looking acute. 7 is also looking acute. And so we're going with congruent. Remember, these are alternate exteriors, 1 and 7. And we've got the whole code right here. Alternate exteriors are congruent. So if you just took that quiz we did today and you know all of your correspondings, all of your alternate, all of your consecutive, exterior, interior, whatever, then this is literally free because you've got the easy code to change here. All right, let's do one more. Let's do 4 and 5, then we're moving on. 4 and 5, what do you think? Congruent or supplementary? Supplementary. I agree with you. They're supplementary. We're going all caps again. And I think that 4 and 5 are consecutive because they're on the same side, and interior because they're on the inside. Okay, we're going to look at example 2. For example 2, it tells you angle 1 equals 65. There's nothing new going on here except for we're getting the exact angles. So angle 1 equals 65. A very important thing is to just go ahead and throw that 65 in there, right? Label it, go for it. Now, if we know that that's 65, we know that we're going to have a lot of them that are 65, 65, 65. What are we going to get for all of these supplementary options? The supplementary needs to be the number that adds together with 65 to make 180, okay? In other words, we can do a real quick math. What is 180 minus 65? Anybody know what that is? It's over 100, I know that for sure. Anybody know it? It is 115. Okay, so what we just did is 180 minus 65. That's because we know that, for example, angle 2 is going to be whatever number adds together with 65 to make 180. What's 65 plus 115? It's 180. And we know that these are a nice linear pair. Angle 2 equals 115. Give your reasoning. Well, at least its relation to angle 1 is, we could say, this is a linear pair with angle 1. Remember, linear pair is back from that very first unit. Now let's look at angle 3. For the rest of these, we've only got 2 options. Low key, you can just flip a coin, you'll get a 50 on the quiz, right? It's either going to be 65 or it's going to be 115. Angle 3. Does that look like a 65? Does that look like a 115? It is a 65, but how could we know for sure? Because angle 3 is a vertical angle with angle 1. And what you'll find out is there's actually like a million different ways to do this, because the way that I thought about it was, hey, 65 is vertical with angle 1, right? But maybe there's a chance that, you know, over here on the side of the room, maybe Dallas is thinking, well, instead of thinking about angle 1, what if I think about angle 2? Angle 3 looks like a linear pair with angle 2. And both of those reasons are legit, okay? It's kind of like when you're doing, you know, a puzzle. There's different ways to kind of figure out which way you're coming in, okay? I almost said doing a Sudoku, but we did that earlier, and I don't think many of you knew how to really do that. Number 4, what do you think, 65 or 115?
Hold on, what number C? I mean, letter C.
So we're doing C, which is talking about angle 4. So first, find angle 4. I found it right here. What did you say it was? It is 115. Now there is literally like 4 or 5 different ways that you could come to this conclusion. The first one I heard was vertical with angle 2. And I agree with that 100%. Here's angle 2. Here's angle 4. And we know that vertical angles are congruent. Angle 2 is 115. Angle 4 is 115. They're the same thing. We learned that months ago. Okay? Now here's where we're going to bring in our current knowledge. Because now we're going to go from this kind of first hub down to the second one. Okay, now we're going to introduce this parallel line. Okay, no longer, we can't use linear pairs anymore. We can't use vertical angles anymore. Now we have to use our new ideas, whether that's alternate exterior, corresponding, consecutive interiors. So up next is angle 5, which is this one right here. Okay, do you think angle 5, first of all, does it look acute or obtuse?
Acute.
It looks acute, and that is enough for this question for me to say, you know what, it's 65. Now, when it comes to your reasoning, you cannot just write it's acute, okay? You need to use for your reasoning one of our new kind of linears, verticals, but again, we're going to have to, instead of linears and verticals, use some of our correspondings. You've got many different options here. I think you have 3 different options at this point. How can you figure this out? I agree with you, okay? That 5 is a corresponding angle with angle 1. That's right, because here's my 1, here's my 5. They're corresponding, top left, top left. And the top of the page, literally the entire notes was 5 words. It says corresponding, congruent. Cool. What do you think about 6? I agree. Kevin said 115 and he's 100% right. Give me a reason why. Sure, that works, right? We could say it's corresponding with angle 2. I agree with you. Angle 2 is 115. Angle 6 is a corresponding angle. That works. Now for 7 and 8, let's use something besides corresponding, right? It's our practice, so let's practice something else. What do you think 7's angle is? 65. Can somebody give me, not corresponding, a reason why? Okay, so Zay had a good idea. He said because it's vertical with 5. You could do that. And I also liked what I heard from Monte over here. We could say that this was alternate exterior. So that's alternate exterior. Which angle is that going to be with? Angle 1. And if we go back to the top, it says alternate exterior angles are congruent. Okay? So we noticed, hey, 1 and 7, they're alternate exteriors. Those should be congruent. And then lastly, I'm sure you know, 115. Now, if I wanted to use consecutive something, okay, how could I set this up? 115, because angle 8 is consecutive. Anybody know how to finish this up? Well, the only options now are either going to be consecutive interiors or exteriors. And 8 is not an interior, so it's got to be an exterior. And then it's going to have to be with angle 1. Now, it could be. It could be. Like, literally, there's, like, you can do this whichever way you want, right? Yep, yep. Okay. Like we were saying, over here, these these have to be exactly the same, right? Your angle measurements, you don't get to pick whatever angle you want. But your reasoning, you have a whole Rubik's Cube full of ways that you could get to this, right? You could say that 3 should be supplementary with 6 because 3 and 6 are consecutive interiors. You could also say that 3 is alternate, interiors with 5, and so those two could be congruent. So there's 100 different ways to go about it. All of this, before I'm going to stop the video in just a second, the number one most important thing is that you make sure you understand this only works for parallel lines. When it comes to these two, on a different piece of paper, These are corresponding angles, okay? And even though our notes say corresponding are congruent, these two angles are not congruent, okay? And the reason is they're not parallel. You have to have those parallel lines. Otherwise, all of this is bust. All of this doesn't work at all. So these are related. They're corresponding, like that's how they're related. As far as the exact angles, they're just going to be random numbers, right? I mean, this one might be 78, and this one right here might be 61. Like, they're just going to be random numbers that are unrelated. They have no bearing on each other whatsoever. Corresponding is correct, but these angles are not guaranteed. Only with the parallel, that's when you can guarantee it. All right, we're done for the day.